Welcome to Vulnerable Relationships.
I, 32, male, am in love with my former sister-in-law, 27, female. I'm finally at a point where I can't stand this anymore. I've been in love with this woman for a very long time, maybe a couple of years at this point, and I'm not sure if I should just let go of my feelings or attempt to make something with her. I met my ex-wife and her sister when I was 23 years old, and the relationship developed very quickly. By 26, I had my son and daughter and had gotten married. However, within months of being married, my ex-wife had an affair, but worse than that, the man she cheated with had gotten her into heroin. After confronting her on this, she said she was going to get help, but instead, she left in the night. I haven't heard from her in 4 years, and the last I heard she's still with that guy, and they are homeless in Las Vegas. Not sure how true that is, but being focused on holding it together for the kids, I don't have time to chase her down, nor do I want to after what she pulled. I ended up obtaining a divorce in her absence. I did, however, maintain a very positive relationship with my in-laws after the fact. Every other weekend my kids stay over with their grandparents on that side, and they still treat me like a son. I still go to parties at Christmas, and I'm reasonably liked by the family. Nobody talks about my ex anymore, mainly not to worry my kids. My oldest, my son, is very hurt by his mother leaving. He's 9 now, and I had to seek therapy for him when he told me he hoped his mother was dead. She had been getting verbally abusive towards the end, which was when he was around 5 or 6. Anyhow, in the year following my ex leaving, her sister and her boyfriend started coming around a lot to see the kids. They knew I worked a lot and would babysit and call it practice as they wanted to have children. My kids loved them and were spoiled by them, which I didn't mind because we all needed a little positivity. They got married and were very in love. However, her husband was killed in a workplace accident shortly after the birth of their daughter. It's been extremely rough and painful for everyone involved, as one can imagine. I followed my sister-in-law's example and began to take her daughter to give her time to herself if things got too hard to deal with or if she needed alone time. She's been in grief counseling for a few years, but she still wears her ring and has told me she can't ever imagine dating again. I talk to her about him frequently and she's now in a better place, but she's still very much in love with him. I can't imagine that sort of pain. Over the last 2 years, we've been a more constant figure in each other's lives. My kids love their aunt and I have her over for dinner a couple of times a week. My daughter and her daughter have become close and love being around each other, so they have sleepovers. I've moved on from my ex by this time, but the idea of dating someone as dangerous as their mother has kept me out of the dating scene. I don't know when it happened, but slowly I began to get soft on my sister-in-law. She's a great mom even after all she's been through. She's one of the sweetest people I know and her sense of humor always leaves me laughing and happy. Then I started realizing that I was physically attracted to her. I've always felt kind of guilty about it because her late husband was a good friend, and since she is still grieving, I've kept my feelings to myself. Since COVID started, we've spent more time together due to social distancing, causing us to lose contact with most other people. Nothing romantic has ever been discussed, and I try not to flirt, but last week it was very late, and after the kids went to bed, I made us a few drinks. Not enough to get drunk, but she decided she'd rather spend the night, so I slept on my couch. I woke up to breakfast this morning, and the 4 of us felt like the sort of family I've always wanted. She even kissed my forehead, which is not something she normally does. I still didn't say anything, but after she left, I found my son quietly playing with his toys in his room. He looked upset, so I asked him if he was alright. He tells me point blankly, in the way only a kid can, that he wishes my sister-in-law was his mother. I sat down with him and asked him why he thought that way, and he gave a whole bunch of reasons, her being nice to him and that she never yelled about anything. He likes seeing her at his grandparents, and she draws pictures with him, which I didn't know they did. By the end of it, my heart that was already melting for this woman is now even more wound up. When visiting, dropping them off with their grandparents, I tried to breach the subject with her folks to kind of get a feel of how they would react. I made a joke about her and I acting like a married couple sometimes. They didn't laugh and were kind of standoffish, still friendly, but either they knew something or they disapproved. It's getting too hard for me to ignore or pretend it's not getting to me. I'm in love with her. Either I've got to let go of my feelings and find some way not to think of her, or I have to find some sort of way to navigate through the situation and tell her everything. If anybody out there has any insight on how to approach a widow, especially one who was married to a friend with this sort of intention, I could use your help.
Comments.
Comment 1. Just came here to say that you should tread very carefully. You don't want to ruin your good relationship by trying or succeeding in getting with your sister-in-law. My advice is just to talk to her and see what she thinks, be as upfront as possible, and discuss the pros and cons, best and worst case scenarios. She may shut it down or maybe be down for giving it a whirl. Good luck. Hope he replies. That's what I worry about. I've got a feeling she might feel the same way on some level, though neither of us has expressed it. I've just tried to ignore it and try not to think about her like this, but it's getting difficult to ignore. If today she came up to me and told me she found someone, I think I'd be a wreck. Most of the reason I made this post was to finally get it off my chest. I feel so in love, so guilty and nervous. I'm never like this. Comment 2. She kissed your forehead, bro. This is a positive sign of affection she has for you, but is this love? The answer lies with her. I feel she is not ready for love right now. She needs time. Be patient, let her confess it. I feel she will if you spend more time and family activities with her and her kid. I'm pretty sure she has something for you, but she is a bit confused between sympathy, like, and love for you. Comment 3. This isn't a very good idea. The kids will wish the sister-in-law is their mom even if she becomes their stepmom. Then if you and the sister-in-law ever have kids together, well, your current kids will probably have significant issues about the sister-in-law not being their real mom even more, and they'll probably resent their cousin siblings, develop an inferiority complex, act out in 1,000,001 ways, etc. Why? Because it would be a mess. Don't make it a mess. A wonderful aunt is a great thing to have. Don't take that away from your kids. Comment 4. You have the perfect opportunity. Invite her and her son to dinner. Sometime when you have some adult time to talk, mention what your son said and see her reaction. I would be a little on the serious side. After all, it's your son's emotional health you were discussing, and ask her opinion of your son's discussion. Depending on how things go, you might ask what she thought about you and her. I would not push it though. You are only asking the question depending on her reaction. If she goes for it, good. If she is hesitant, ask her thoughts and then drop it. Or something like that. Update 1. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who gave me advice on how to proceed and ideas on what I could say to my former sister-in-law. Here's what I ended up doing. Shortly after making the first post, I remembered that my children would be spending Sunday night at their grandparents' house. Typically, when this happens, my niece, my sister-in-law's daughter, joins them. I allow these bi-weekly visits because I believe it's essential for them to maintain a healthy relationship with their mother's parents. My sister-in-law lets her daughter go because she enjoys playing with my daughter, but I realized we both have a free night. Normally, I just game or hit the gym on an open night, but I figured it would be the perfect opportunity to spend time with my sister-in-law without the kids around. So, I sent her a text saying, "Hey, the kids are out this Sunday, was thinking you might want to get dinner." It was a fairly upscale place that reopened about 2 months ago for outdoor dining. I have never asked her out to dinner before, and we're rarely alone together or without a child in the other room. She says she'd love to, and so my panic starts setting in because now I have to act on my feelings. I asked her if she'd prefer to meet at my place and take one car or meet at the restaurant. She says she'd come by my place first. I'm a bit more cleaned up than normal, dressed up but not overly dressed. She shows up and my god, she's in a very nice evening dress and makeup, not something she normally wears. She's looking stunning. I must have been slack-jawed for a second, I had to be LOL. We make a little small talk and compliment how we look, but I still didn't have my nerve yet and she isn't pushing the issue. Dinner was wonderful with a live jazz band playing. We are definitely coming back to this place. She tells me this is the first time she's had an adult social outing that didn't involve her daughter in a few years. Then I mentioned that it has been a long time for me as well. We're laughing, joking, talking, and a little casual touching here and there. I couldn't seem to find my nerve though, afraid of ruining this moment, so I just submitted to having fun. But as we're leaving, my mind snaps and I'm just like, screw it. When we started going back to the car, I gave her my arm and we walked back to the car arm in arm. No awkwardness and nobody mentioned that it was happening. I opened the door for her and I had planned on driving her back to her car. As I opened her door, she stopped me. Even sort of nervous. She just outright tells me to stop and that she wants to kiss me. There was no alcohol at dinner, so this is all her. I pull her in and we kiss. I can barely describe how wonderful it felt to touch her finally. Well, the kissing goes on outside this restaurant with her leaning against my car for at least half an hour. When we finally break, we share a few more dreamy looks before we get in the car and drive back to my place. She's holding my hand as I'm driving. I don't think I've ever been happier. I confessed to her that I started having feelings for her a long time ago. But after the terrible things we went through, I didn't want to scare her away. She tells me that she's carried a torch for about 6 months herself. At that time, I'd gone on a couple of Tinder dates, and since we're just friends, I described what a waste of time those dates were. She tells me she began feeling intensely jealous and angry that I was seeing these girls. It was about the time that it clicked in her mind that she had somehow developed feelings for me. As it turns out, I didn't approach her because of her late husband, and she wasn't approaching me because she was afraid I'd see too much of her sister, my ex-wife, in her and start to resent her for it. I invited her in after we got back to my home, and we decided to try and fight off the desire to jump straight into bed. We just sat on the couch snuggling and talking about what we would need to do to make this relationship work. There were some teary moments there. We, of course, talked about her late husband a little and where she feels that she is in the grief process, letting her know I didn't want to rush her and that I'm not going anywhere if she needs time. I'll wait as long as she needs. She says that she feels like she's in a place where she can love again and that she's long past feeling guilty for having feelings for me. It was something she struggled with. She then brought up her sister and the obvious questions a few people asked in the comments. What would we do if my ex, her sister, ever decided to show her face around here again or try to get back into my kid's life? What if she comes back reformed and apologetic, would I take her back? I told my sister-in-law that's a hard no. I've forgiven her for cheating on me, but I could never forgive her for what she did to my son. He was quite a sunshiny happy boy before his mother started cheating, using, and lashing out at him. He's doing better now, but for a long while, his behavior and negativity for somebody so young troubled me. My sister-in-law was concerned about how he might react to her, as unlike our respective daughters, he is old enough to understand everything. I told her not to tell him as it might embarrass him, but not too long ago he told me he wished his aunt was his mom instead. We said we were going to take it slow and not go too fast with things, but the kissing started again, and since we were in private this time, we gave up the fight to stay out of the bedroom. I've had fantasies throughout my feelings for her, and getting to pet her face in the morning was one I finally got to live out. Moving forward, we're going to establish date nights and work on building our already strong foundation. When we inevitably tell her folks we're a couple, we're going to do it together. But that's where I'm at. That's my update. If this subreddit allows, maybe I'll do another to let people know how the parents, in-laws, and kids take the news. 2 years of wishing she was mine, and now she is. I better not mess this up. Edit. Oh my god, this blew up. First of all, thank you for all the crazy rewards. I'd respond to your posts, but they locked my posts, which annoys me because I want to respond to as many people as I can. Thank you for all the love and support. I'm in love with an angel, and I will update you in the future. Update 2. I forgot to add that I'm referring to my ex-wife as Jessica and my sister-in-law, who I'd been calling sister-in-law Sylvia because funny. Well, we've told everyone, and for the most part it's gone over quite well. When our respective kids were with my in-laws, Sylvia and I went to see my parents. They met her a handful of times, but they don't know her too well as my in-laws and my family rarely attended mutual functions. They at least recognized who she was. My dad isn't a particularly sentimental person, so I have no idea what he thinks about it, but my mom is on board. She did ask, does Jess know, and we told her that I hadn't spoken with her in 4 years and Sylvia hadn't heard from her in 2 years. We would cross that bridge when we got to it. Other than that, my folks just seemed happy for me. Yesterday, when we attended a small family gathering for Labor Day at my in-laws, we knew that the reception here would be somewhat chilly as they're all also related to my ex-wife. My parents did us the favor of taking the kids to the zoo for the afternoon and ice cream too. We arrived at the party together, and of course, everyone was wondering where the kids were. It felt like a million things were telling me not to do this. But taking her by the hand, we both explained the kids were not here because we intended to tell everyone that we were now a couple. This wasn't a huge crowd, maybe like 8 people, but it felt like I announced it to a stadium. I don't know how we expected it to go, but several of our aunts were very pleased with this. We received hugs. Initially, nobody mentioned my ex-wife. They were just happy because they had all settled on Sylvia just never dating again. It was only my mother-in-law that caused any issues. She told the party that she knew we were an item because I was always giving her puppy dog eyes and told them Sylvia talked about me constantly. She asked for how long we'd been dating in secret and I told her only a week. She scoffed and told me that she didn't think starting a relationship off by lying would be a smart move. She then accused, jokingly, that Sylvia and I had disappeared from the pool party in June to smooch. Her mother and father asked to talk with us after the party and asked us just how serious things were. And like my parents asked whether my ex-wife knew or not. When I said no and that her opinion shouldn't matter given that she abandoned her family 4 years ago, they said they would be more comfortable with everything if I were to tell Jessica that I am now dating her sister. They are both deeply afraid that my ex will return sober and renewed and make an attempt to make amends, discover that I'm now in love with her younger sister, and relapse. It sounded to me as if they knew something I didn't, and as it turns out, Jess has been calling and talking to them for a year now and they just haven't told me. I was upset they kept this from me. Sylvia was very upset too because not once after her husband's death has Jess ever tried to call her. They showed me her Facebook profile, the one she blocked me from, and there she was looking pretty normal but like a burned out husk of her former self. I have to admit that seeing her not looking like the junkie she became when she left made me feel a little better. Sylvia was also glad her sister is now doing better. Her parents kept their contact with her a secret because she is ashamed of what she's done and feels that she deserved to lose her kids and couldn't face them after all that happened. Sylvia's parents gave me Jess' phone number and asked that I please call and speak with her. I told my mother-in-law that my feelings for Sylvia were real and there was no chance I could reconcile with Jess. Father-in-law seemed to nod in approval, but mother-in-law honestly looked like she was hoping we'd fix things. After we left, I talked to Sylvia about it, and though we discussed it before, a circumstance where Jess returns, we decided to revisit the conversation in light of these new revelations. I told Sylvia that I was in love with her, my whole heart is hers, and that my feelings of love for her are something deeper and stronger than anything I've ever felt for my ex-wife. She ends up crying from the stress of the situation, angry with her parents for keeping secrets, and angry with her sister for not calling her or offering condolences at all after her husband's death. She then admits that she is afraid I might leave her if her sister returns, and I assure her this will never happen. It took some long hugs and a lot of kisses to smooth over the situation, but by the time we went to pick up the kids, we were holding hands together again and feeling more connected than ever. She's been spending the night at my place pretty frequently since we've been together. So the kids don't see anything. I've been setting my alarm for 5 in the morning, getting up and moving to the couch. Well, the morning after we decided to tell the little ones what was going on. Our daughters seem very happy, but they are too young to grasp what's taking place. All they know is that they can play together more. I did take my son aside, just me and him, and asked him if he was okay with this and what he thought about it. He asked if we'd all be living together, and I told him maybe someday. He asked if this made his aunt his stepmom now, and I said he's free to call her whatever he's comfortable with, and I will respect it, and she would too because we both love him. He then asked me a lot of questions about his mother, things he had never asked me before, and I answered pretty much everything he wanted to know. I toned some of my answers down a bit. He's learned a little about the dangers of drugs from school programs, and I was finally honest to a degree when I told him his mom had a problem and she made some bad choices. He asked me why his mother didn't love him, and that broke my heart. I assured him the best I could that his mother did love him, she had just made a lot of terrible mistakes, and that sometimes adults just don't do the right thing when they should. He asked me if I still loved her. I told him I hoped she would get better and that I didn't want her to be sick anymore, but that she hurt me and him so badly that I couldn't love her like I did before. I'm not sure he got all of that, but I tried explaining it to him the best I could. All that aside, he's been so much happier and less withdrawn since Sylvia has been with us, and he's always going out of his way to do all the typical kid stuff to impress her that I did with my mom. At the end of the day, I still have that phone call with the ex to dread, but having Sylvia with me, being able to kiss her and hold her at night, put some joy back into me that's been gone for a very long time. I don't think I ever knew how unhappy I had been all these years until I realized how happy she made me feel. We've been doing all the happy young lover stuff. She's been leaving me with love letters in my work lunchbox, even little poems, and I had flowers sent out to her place of work. She had told me a few of the ladies at work had been trying to get her to ask me out for several months, so I figured the flowers would both make her happy and be a firm thank you wink to the office girls. Thank you to everyone who commented or sent me messages on the first and second posts. They made my day and helped me keep my call to confess to her. Feel free to ask me anything, but I think that's about it for my updates. Update 3. People have been asking me for an update for a couple of months now, so I figured I'd finally sit down and do one. What you're about to read is a comment I wrote last week, and I've just copied and pasted it as it's pretty much good enough to be a post. Details on how the phone calls with my ex-wife went and a little more info. I did talk to her back in September. I wanted to write an update for this, but life got pretty hectic. I did write a 10-paragraph update about a month ago, but my laptop crashed and I lost it and got discouraged. The ex-wife is in a much better place in her recovery. 8 months clean by this point. She finally told me the details of the affair and how things happened, how she got into drugs. Not stuff I wanted to hear, but she's trying to get her life together. As much as I dislike the things she's done to me and the kids, I want her to get healthy. I shouldn't, but I worry about her still sometimes. Anyhow, I got around to telling her about Sylvia and me, and she was dumbfounded by it. When I first met my ex, she was 19 and Sylvia was 14, and in her mind, she always viewed her as a kid in regards to me. To be fair, I did use to refer to Sylvia as her kid sister, but when she remembered that her sister is a fully grown adult who was married and had a child, her hinting that I was a creep stopped. She did ask if I had feelings for her while I was married to her. I denied that I had at that time. We talked about the kids and she was regretful and crying throughout the conversation. She has no idea how she will be able to face them again. I wanted to say something reassuring, but I didn't want to give her the impression that I want her in their lives. I will be cordial, even friendly, but I'm not going to be stupid. She and Sylvia talked for a while too. I didn't eavesdrop intentionally, but from the bits I heard and what I was told, they talked about Sylvia's husband. As it turns out, my ex had gotten arrested for breaking and entering that week and spent the week in jail. She didn't even know he passed until a couple of weeks after the funeral, and by that point, she felt saying anything would just make things worse. Things went as well as could be expected. Sylvia, the 3 kids, and I have been spending almost every day together. I haven't been happier in years. My son and daughter love all the motherly attention they've been getting, and I love getting to learn more about my little niece. Life's good, busy, but it's good. Thanks for asking. Alright, that was my update, and nothing has changed in the week since I wrote it. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer what I can when I can, but during the season my workload increases dramatically and I don't have as much time to be on here as I did when I first posted. So I'm glad I got the nerve to try it with her. I love her so much. I've been so long without a romantic partner that I've forgotten what being in love or feeling loved felt like. Now that I remember, it is shocking to me. I didn't realize how alone and miserable I was. I mean, for Christ's sake, we played Scrabble last night and for some reason it made me ridiculously happy. Update 4. It has nearly been a year since I and my former sister-in-law, Sylvia, decided to begin dating. We are living together and I couldn't be happier. We are in the market for a new home. Our children are benefiting from having 2 parents around to care for them. Our daughters have begun to call each other sisters and my son has accepted it in the same way. They are just normal siblings. It is interesting with my son. When he is talking to his friends or teacher, he refers to Sylvia as his mom, but when calling her or talking to her, he still calls her auntie, and our daughters are the same. I am still uncle. It confuses some people we meet, but it's always an interesting story to tell. We haven't had much contact with my ex-wife since my last post. From what we hear, she is doing much better, has a halfway decent job, boyfriend, and is keeping clean. I don't like to think about her being introduced back into my children's lives, but if she continues to be a clean and well-rounded person, it will make it much harder for me to deny her visitation should she seek it. Not just from a legal standpoint, but from a moral one as well. Neither Sylvia nor I look forward to that day, but the worries seem way off. Her parents have stopped their prodding into our business and haven't tried to force the ex back into our lives as we feared. Our kids spend the weekend with them now, as my 2 were already doing that beforehand. So Sylvia and I get to spend Friday night and most of Saturday going on dates and having some alone time. Our mutual friends were all pretty surprised by this and have been very supportive as well. They try to be polite and not mention my ex-wife, but every so often it does come up. Mostly everyone is just happy that we found happiness together. One side of the family that I failed to mention in all of this was the family of her late husband. As you might expect, her daughter still sees them regularly and they are happy and accepting of the relationship. His father even told me point blank that he was glad it was me because he thought he would hate his daughter-in-law bringing some strange man into his granddaughter's life. We haven't had many gatherings, but the few get-togethers we have had included them and will always include them. Speaking of her late husband, Sylvia and I have talked quite a bit about our feelings, and she's even had me come along to one of her therapy sessions because despite everything going so well and the immense and wonderful love we have for each other, his memory and presence will always be a part of our lives. She decided on her own that out of respect for me she had to take her wedding band off. Something that caused a lot of sadness, as you can imagine. I told her that she didn't need to do this, and if we were to get married she's got 2 hands. After I said this, she began to wear it on a necklace instead. She wears an engagement ring now. I don't have any crazy story on how the engagement went down, and I didn't spring on her in some crazy public spectacle, but there were tears and hugs and kisses. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks, everyone, for all the positive words of encouragement.
Thanks for watching the video. Please consider leaving a like and subscribing. See you in the next video.